What if I told you that medieval Christians endured 40 days of intense fasting before Christmas, and what they considered celebration would shock you completely? Tonight, we journey back to a time when Christmas wasn't about feasting, but about sacrifice, when Advent meant genuine hunger, genuine devotion, and rituals so demanding that most of us today would never survive them. You'll discover forgotten traditions that will change how you see the holidays forever. So settle in, pull those covers up nice and warm, and let your mind drift back through centuries of winter nights. If you're enjoying these peaceful historical journeys, please subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our cozy explorations through time. Tonight, we're traveling to medieval Europe, where the approach of Christmas meant something entirely different, something both beautiful and brutal. Chapter 1: The First Night's Frost. The autumn air carries a sharp bite tonight, as harvest fields stretch endlessly under a pale crescent moon. This is November, when medieval Europeans felt the first whispers of what they called the ecclesiastical New Year, not a time of celebration, but of solemn preparation. In monastery corridors, candles flicker against stone walls, casting dancing shadows as monks begin their most challenging season. The Advent fast begins with the setting sun, 40 days of restriction that would test every soul. Forget the Christmas, with its abundant tables and joyful feasts. Medieval Christians approached December 25th through hunger, through sacrifice, through devotion that demanded everything. Their Christmas morning would be earned, not given freely. Tonight, we witness the beginning of this extraordinary spiritual journey through medieval Europe. Listen, can you hear the soft chanting echoing through these ancient halls? The psalms of the day rise and fall like gentle waves, carrying prayers of preparation into the cold night air. These monks have already begun their fast, their bodies growing lighter, their spirits supposedly growing stronger. The first night always feels the hardest, when comfort still calls from memory, before hunger becomes familiar. In villages across medieval Europe, families gather around simple wooden tables tonight. But notice what's missing. No meat graces these boards, no dairy products, no eggs or rich foods. Instead, simple bread, watery porridge, perhaps some vegetables if they're fortunate. Children learn early that Christmas must be earned through sacrifice, that joy comes only after suffering. This is preparation, medieval style. The church bells begin their nightly ritual, deep bronze tones rolling across frost-covered fields. Each toll reminds the faithful of their commitment, their promise to endure these 40 days of fasting. Peasants pause in their evening chores. Nobles set aside their comfortable lives, all bound together by this shared season of want. Tonight marks the beginning of humanity's most demanding religious preparation. Candlelight flickers in cottage windows, casting warm glows against the growing darkness. Mothers explain to their children why supper feels so sparse tonight, why father's usual portion has shrunk to almost nothing. This isn't cruelty, it's devotion. Medieval families believed that physical hunger opened spiritual doors, that Christmas joy meant nothing without Advent suffering. The first night sets the tone for everything ahead. The monastery kitchen falls silent earlier each evening. Now, Brother Benedict carefully measuring out tomorrow's meager portions. No butter for the bread, no milk for the porridge, no honey to sweeten the bitter herbs. Each monk will receive exactly what the rule prescribes, nothing more, nothing less. In this candlelit room, the Advent fast becomes a calculated dance between survival and sacrifice. Outside, autumn's final breath carries the scent of dying leaves and wood smoke. Medieval Europeans read these signs differently than we do, seeing not just seasonal change, but spiritual invitation. The world grows dark and cold, mirroring their inner journey toward Christmas morning. Nature itself seems to fast, stripping away summer's abundance, leaving only what's essential for survival. In the village church, Father Thomas prepares tomorrow's sermon about preparation and sacrifice. His own stomach already gnaws with familiar hunger, a sensation he'll carry for the next 39 days. He knows his congregation struggles, that children cry for food their parents cannot give, that the elderly grow weaker with each passing week. Yet this is the path, the medieval way to Christmas. The lord of the manor sits in his great hall tonight, but his table differs little from the peasant's humble boards. Even nobility submits to Advent's demands, wealthy merchants and powerful knights, all bound by the same religious calendar. Their fine clothes cannot hide their growing hunger. Their soft beds cannot ease the spiritual discipline they've embraced. Advent equalizes all souls. Listen to the wind whistling through bare branches, carrying prayers and promises across the medieval landscape. Each household has made their commitment. Each family understands the price of celebration. Children learn that Christmas isn't guaranteed. It must be approached through discipline, through community suffering that somehow transforms into shared joy. Tonight begins their pilgrimage through hunger toward hope. The crescent moon watches over this transformed world where abundance becomes scarcity by choice, where comfort surrenders to spiritual discipline. Medieval Christians believed the path to Christmas led through genuine sacrifice, not the gentle Lent we know today, and why taste applied of caning defecate, but 40 days of real hunger, real testing. Tonight, as frost touches the fields, their extraordinary journey begins in earnest. In monastery cells across Europe, monks settle into their narrow beds with empty stomachs and full hearts. They've begun something magnificent and terrible, a fast that will test their bodies while purifying their souls. The first night always brings doubt, wondering if they'll survive the next 39 days, yet tradition carries them forward through faith and community commitment. The church bell tolls one final time tonight, its bronze voice echoing across fields and villages, reaching into every home where medieval families prepare for sleep. That gentle sound carries both warning and invitation, reminding all who hear it that tomorrow brings another day of fast, another step closer to Christmas morning. Let its echoes guide you now into peaceful dreams of simpler times. Chapter 2 of Fasts and Hunger. Picture yourself walking through a medieval village in late November. The air is crisp and thin, and something feels different about this place. Tables that should be laden with food sit eerily empty. Hearths that should crackle with roasting meats hold only the gentle glow of dying embers. This is the world of the 40-day fast, where anticipation and hunger dance together in sacred harmony. For our medieval ancestors, the weeks before Christmas weren't about abundance, they were about absence. The Advent fast began on St. Martin's Day, November 11th, and stretched like a long shadow until Christmas morning. Imagine waking each day knowing that meat, dairy, eggs, even butter were forbidden. The very foods that brought comfort and warmth were now symbols of spiritual discipline, transforming kitchens into spaces of mindful restraint. Walk with me into a medieval larder during Advent. See how different it looks from what you might expect. No wheels of cheese aging on wooden shelves, no strings of sausages hanging from rafters, no crocks of butter waiting to be churned. Instead, you find sacks of grain, bundles of dried herbs, and simple root vegetables stored in cool earth. This sparse bounty told a story of spiritual preparation through physical sacrifice. The most striking sight in any Advent home was the dining table itself. Often it would sit completely bare, polished wood gleaming in candlelight like a monument to restraint. Families would gather around these empty surfaces for prayer, their empty stomachs echoing the emptiness before them. It was a powerful visual reminder that this season was about creating space, both physical and spiritual, for something greater to arrive. When meals were prepared, they followed ancient rules carved in stone by church doctrine. Picture a simple bowl placed before you, filled with hulled barley that's been slowly simmered in water. The grains are soft and plain, seasoned only with coarse salt and a few bitter herbs. This wasn't punishment, it was purification. Each bland spoonful was a prayer, each unsatisfying bite a step closer to Christmas morning's promised feast. The taste of Advent was deliberate in its simplicity. Barley porridge tasted of earth and rain. Salt brought the memory of tears. Bitter herbs like wormwood reminded the tongue of sacrifice. There was no sweetness here, no richness to comfort the palate. Medieval Christians believed that by denying their bodies pleasure, they were opening their souls to receive divine grace. Every meal was both nourishment and meditation, sustenance and surrender. Imagine sitting at your family table, feeling the gnaw of hunger as you swallow another spoonful of thin broth. Your stomach protests, but your spirit soars. This was the paradox of the Advent fast, physical weakness leading to spiritual strength. Children learned patience by watching their parents eat without complaint. Husbands and wives found unity in shared sacrifice. The entire community moved together through this valley of voluntary hardship. But not everyone faced the fast with equal burdens. Picture a poor man walking past the manor house on a cold December evening. Through diamond-paned windows, he glimpses servants preparing for their lord's table. Steam rises from platters of roasted fowl. The smell of rich gravies wafts through the night air. His own family waits at home, their meager barley already consumed. This was the cruel irony of medieval fasting, rules that bent for wealth. Our poor man pauses in the snow, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Inside the manor, nobles feast on delicacies disguised as fasting food, fish prepared with exotic spices, honey cakes shaped like bread, wine flowing like water. Meanwhile, his children sleep with empty bellies, their dreams filled with visions of Christmas meat. The fast meant different things to different people, but suffering was not equally shared among all social classes. Yet, even in this inequality, there was profound meaning in the practice itself. The poor man's sacrifice was real, raw, uncompromising. His hunger had no escape clause, no loophole written in gold. Perhaps his suffering was more authentic, more aligned with the original spirit of Advent preparation. In his empty stomach lived the truest anticipation, the deepest longing for the feast of Christmas, when all creation would rejoice together in abundance. As weeks passed, the effects of fasting became visible throughout the village. Faces grew thinner, movements slower, but eyes held a strange brightness. There was clarity that came with hunger, a sharpening of the spirit that accompanied the weakening of the flesh. People spoke more softly, moved more deliberately, found beauty in simple things. The fast was transforming them, preparing vessels worthy of Christmas joy, creating space for miracle. In monastery kitchens, brothers perfected the art of making nothing into something. They discovered that barley could be ground into flour, that dried peas could become hearty soup, that bitter herbs could cleanse both palate and soul. These men became alchemists of Advent, transforming humble ingredients into meals that fed both body and spirit. Their creativity flourished within constraints, proving that limitation often births the greatest innovation. The rhythm of fasting days created its own music in medieval life. Dawn prayers on empty stomachs, midday work fueled only by weak broth, evening contemplation beside bare tables. This pattern repeated for 40 days, each sunrise bringing both hunger and hope. Time moved differently during Advent, measured not in hours, but in heartbeats, not in meals, but in prayers. The fast became a pilgrimage through time itself. Children born into this tradition learned patience before they learned to walk. They watched their mothers stir pots of barley water with the same reverence reserved for holy rituals. Food became sacred, not through abundance, but through scarcity, not through richness, but through restraint. These little ones grew up understanding that the most precious gifts come to those who wait, who prepare, who make space in their lives for wonder. As December deepened, the contrast between fasting and future feasting grew more profound. Empty pantries would soon overflow, bare tables would groan under Christmas bounty, hollow cheeks would flush with celebration. But first came this valley, this necessary darkness before dawn, this 40-day journey through hunger toward hope. The medieval mind understood that joy without sacrifice is shallow, that feast without fast is merely gluttony dressed in celebration. And so our ancestors waited, stomachs empty, but hearts full, bodies weakened, but spirits soaring. They understood something we have forgotten, that anticipation is often sweeter than fulfillment, that longing can be more nourishing than satisfaction. Their Advent fast taught them to hunger for more than food, to thirst for more than drink, to wait for more than earthly pleasure. In their patient suffering, Christmas was already being born. Chapter 3. Dawn of the Ember Days. In the depths of medieval winter, when frost painted monastery windows like delicate lace, the brothers prepared for something extraordinary. 4 times each year, the church called for special days, days that would test both body and spirit. These were the Ember Days, times when ordinary routine gave way to deeper devotion. As dawn approached this particular Wednesday, the monastery bells would soon call the faithful to a rhythm as old as Christendom itself. The first light barely touched the stone walls when Brother Thomas stirred in his narrow cell. Sleep had been fitful, his stomach already reminding him of the fast that lay ahead. Today marked the beginning of December's Ember Days, 3 days of fasting and prayer that prepared the soul for Christmas. He could hear the gentle shuffle of sandaled feet in the corridor, other brothers rising to meet this sacred obligation together. A soft bell chimed through the darkness, calling the community to matins. In the chapel, candlelight danced across weathered faces as voices joined in ancient melodies. The psalms seemed different on Ember Days, more urgent somehow, as if the very stones absorbed their prayers. Brother Thomas felt his hunger transform into something else, something that connected him to generations of faithful who had walked this same path of willing sacrifice. After Matins came the work, but today even labor carried spiritual weight. Brother Thomas tended the scriptorium, copying sacred texts while his stomach quietly protested. Each carefully formed letter became a prayer, each word a step deeper into contemplation. The Ember Fast wasn't mere deprivation, it was transformation, turning physical hunger into spiritual nourishment. His quill moved steadily across parchment, marking time until the next bell would call them to prayer. At the third hour, bells chimed for Tercy, and the brothers gathered once more. Their voices rose in unison, creating harmonies that seemed to lift the very roof. Brother Thomas noticed how hunger sharpened his awareness, made colors more vivid, sounds more beautiful. The Ember Days taught this lesson, that emptiness could be fullness, that less could somehow become more. Each prayer felt like a gentle tide, washing away earthly concerns. The morning stretched longer than usual, punctuated by the rhythm of bells and prayer. At the sixth hour came sext, another gathering in the chapel, where stone pillars stood like ancient sentries. Brother Thomas found his thoughts turning inward, away from the persistent gnawing in his belly, toward something deeper. The Ember Days created space, space for God to fill what human desire had emptied. This was the ancient wisdom, the sacred exchange. By none, the ninth hour, the sun reached its weak winter peak. The brothers' footsteps echoed softly through corridors as they returned to the chapel. Brother Thomas felt light-headed now, but strangely clear, as if the fast had polished his soul like a window. Through the colored glass, light fell in patterns that seemed somehow more meaningful today. The Ember Days revealed hidden beauty, showed how sacrifice could illuminate what abundance obscured. Afternoon work took on a meditative quality, each task becoming prayer in motion. Brother Thomas swept the cloisters, his broom marking rhythm like a metronome. Other brothers tended gardens, prepared simple meals they wouldn't eat, maintained the monastery that sheltered their devotion. The Ember Days taught service without reward, work without immediate gratification, the patience to tend seeds in winter soil, trusting in spring's eventual return to this sacred place. As Vespers approached, the daylight began its gentle retreat. Brother Thomas joined his brothers in the chapel where evening prayers took on special significance during Ember Days. Their voices seemed thinner now, refined by fasting, yet somehow more pure. The ancient words carried deeper meaning when spoken by empty stomachs and full hearts. Each psalm became a bridge connecting their temporary suffering to eternal joy, their willing hunger to divine abundance. After Vespers came the evening meal, or rather, the absence of one. Brother Thomas sat in the refectory with his brothers, sharing only water and silent companionship. The empty bowls before them spoke volumes, teaching lessons no sermon could convey. This was the Ember Day paradox, finding fullness in emptiness, discovering abundance through willing poverty. Their stomachs complained, but their spirits soared on wings of shared sacrifice and common purpose. As darkness deepened, something magical began to unfold in the cloister garden. Brother Thomas watched from his cell window as lanterns appeared, carried by silent figures moving in procession. The light flickered against stone arches, creating dancing shadows that seemed alive with purpose. This was the Ember Day tradition, a lantern-lit walk through the sacred space, each flame a prayer, each step a meditation on light, conquering darkness. Brother Thomas joined the procession, his own lantern, adding to the gentle constellation, moving through the garden paths. No words were spoken, only the soft shuffle of feet on stone, the whisper of robes in winter air. Each brother carried his own light, yet together they created something greater, a community of illumination moving through sacred darkness. The lanterns reflected off fountain waters, multiplying their glow, turning the cloister into a gallery of living prayer. The procession moved slowly, deliberately, each step a conscious act of devotion. Brother Thomas felt his hunger fade into insignificance beside this moment of collective beauty. The lantern light revealed faces transformed by fasting and prayer, features sharpened by spiritual purpose, the eyes bright with inner flame. This was the gift of Ember Days, to strip away excess, to reveal the essential, to show how community could shine brightest when individual desires dimmed. As the procession completed its circuit, the brothers gathered in the chapter house where embers glowed in the central brazier. The dying coals mirrored their own spent energy, yet promised warmth despite apparent exhaustion. Brother Thomas gazed into the orange depths, seeing in those fading sparks the entire mystery of Ember Days, how endings could be beginnings, how death could nurture life, how fasting could somehow feed the soul more completely than any feast. Compline, the final prayer of the day, brought the brothers together one last time. Their voices rose in the ancient melodies that had marked monastic days for centuries. Brother Thomas felt the weight of the fast, but also its gift, the way emptiness had created space for something ineffable to enter. The Ember Days were ending, but their lesson lingered, that sometimes the soul's deepest nourishment came through willing hunger, through chosen emptiness, through sacred sacrifice. As the embers in the brazier finally surrendered to ash, Brother Thomas returned to his cell. The Ember Days were nearly complete, 3 days of fasting and prayer that had transformed ordinary time into something sacred. Through the window, stars appeared in the clear winter sky, distant lights that had witnessed countless generations of faithful keeping this same vigil. Tomorrow would bring regular meals, but tonight brought deeper satisfaction, the fullness that only emptiness could provide. Chapter 4: The Frost's Alms. In the bitter chill of medieval Advent, charity became a sacred duty. Historical records paint vivid pictures of long lines forming outside monastery gates, weary souls waiting for their daily portion of sustenance. The frost clung to stone walls as stale dark bread was distributed with careful ceremony. These moments reveal the stark economic reality of the Middle Ages, where survival often depended on the generosity of others during this holy season. Picture the scene unfolding each morning, rows of the desperate and hungry stretching down cobblestone paths. Their breath formed small clouds in the winter air as they clutched worn cloaks tighter against the cold. Monks moved methodically through the crowd, distributing portions with quiet reverence. The bread was often several days old, dense and dark, but it represented life itself to those who received it with trembling hands. Among these souls stood an elderly man, his weathered face telling stories of countless harsh winters. His back bent from years of labor, hands gnarled, but still steady as he waited patiently in line. This man had once been strong, had worked the fields, and provided for family, but age and circumstance had brought him here to depend on the kindness of strangers and the mercy of God. The distribution followed ancient ritual, each person approaching with head bowed in humility. The monk would place the bread into outstretched palms, often adding quiet words of blessing or comfort. There was no shame in this exchange, only recognition of shared humanity. The elderly man shuffled forward when his turn came, his eyes meeting those of the brother who served him with gentle compassion. These scenes highlighted the vast economic disparities that defined medieval society. While nobles feasted in warm halls, the poor gathered outside religious houses, hoping for scraps. The contrast was stark, yet it was also where mercy found its truest expression. The wealthy fulfilled their Christian obligation through alms, while the destitute maintained their dignity through gratitude, creating a complex web of interdependence that sustained communities through harsh seasons. The bread itself was humble fare, made from coarse grains, and often mixed with whatever ingredients were available. It was dense, sometimes gritty, bearing little resemblance to the fine white loaves enjoyed by the wealthy. Yet this simple sustenance was received as though it were gold, precious beyond measure to those whose stomachs had known the ache of prolonged hunger during the Advent fast. Our elderly man accepted his portion with quiet reverence, his fingers closing carefully around the dark loaf. He whispered a prayer of thanks, his voice barely audible above the winter wind. This moment represented more than mere charity. It was communion between strangers, a recognition that in God's eyes all were equal. The bread would sustain his body, but the kindness nourished something deeper within his soul. Gratitude flowed from him like warmth from a hearth, genuine and transformative. He had learned through necessity that every morsel was a gift, every act of kindness, a miracle worth celebrating. His thankfulness was not performative, but arose from deep understanding of life's fragility. In receiving charity with grace, he elevated both giver and recipient, creating moments of sacred connection in the midst of material hardship. Often, warm soup accompanied the bread, ladled from great cauldrons that simmered throughout the day. The broth was thin, flavored with herbs and whatever vegetables could be spared, but its warmth provided comfort that went beyond mere nutrition. Steam rose from wooden bowls as recipients cupped them close, savoring both the heat and the care that had gone into its preparation, finding solace in community kindness. This dependence on charity was not seen as weakness, but as part of God's design for human community. Medieval society understood that wealth and poverty were temporary conditions, that today's giver might be tomorrow's recipient. The elderly man knew this truth intimately, having experienced both sides of fortune's wheel. His acceptance of help carried no bitterness, only recognition that interdependence was the natural order of things. Religious devotion infused every aspect of this charitable exchange. The act of giving was prayer made manifest, while receiving became an exercise in faith and humility. Medieval Christians believed that caring for the poor brought them closer to Christ, who had himself known poverty and hunger. The elderly man's quiet prayers over his meager meal transformed simple sustenance into sacred communion with the divine. Individual sacrifice made these acts of charity possible. Monks ate less so others might eat it all. Wealthy patrons gave from their abundance, but also from their need. The true beauty lay not just in the giving, but in the recognition that each person's well-being was connected to all others. Sacrifice became a pathway to understanding, creating bonds of compassion that transcended social boundaries and economic differences. The seasoned spirit of giving reached far beyond material provision. During Advent, communities awakened to deeper truths about generosity, recognizing that the greatest gifts were often intangible. Kindness, dignity, respect, hope, these treasures cost nothing, yet enriched both giver and receiver immeasurably. The elderly man carried these gifts with him long after the bread was consumed, sustained by memories of human compassion in dark times. In quiet moments of contemplation, recipients would reflect on the peace that charity brought. Not just the peace of a filled stomach, but the deeper tranquility that comes from experiencing grace in action. The elderly man would sit in whatever shelter he could find, feeling the warmth of community care settling into his bones, knowing that he was not forgotten, that his life held value in the eyes of God and neighbors. Historical records preserve these stories, not as mere documentation, but as testament to humanity's capacity for compassion. Chronicles from monasteries, account books from guilds, personal letters from nobles all speak to the systematic care for the vulnerable during Advent season. These documents reveal that charity was not occasional kindness, but organized commitment to ensuring no one faced the winter fast entirely alone or without hope. As we close this chapter on medieval charity, we glimpse timeless truths about the human spirit. The Frost's Alms reminds us that generosity flourishes even in harsh conditions, that dignity can be maintained in dependence, and that true wealth lies in our connections to one another. The elderly man's story echoes across centuries, teaching us that grace received with gratitude multiplies, creating warmth that no winter can extinguish. Chapter 5: A Solitary Vigil. In the depths of medieval winter, when frost painted cathedral windows like delicate lace, the faithful began their most sacred practice. Advent was not merely waiting, it was transformation. Picture a lone figure kneeling before flickering candles, their breath visible in the cold air, hands clasped in desperate hope. This was when Christians prepared their souls through 40 days of profound spiritual discipline, creating space for the divine to enter their hearts completely. The candlelit vigil began at twilight, when shadows stretched long across stone floors. Each flame represented a prayer, a hope, a longing for redemption. Medieval Christians understood that true preparation required solitude, moments stolen from daily labor to commune with the eternal. In these quiet hours, they would recite ancient psalms, their voices barely whispers in the vast silence. The candles burned steadily, like faithful sentinels guarding their most intimate conversations with heaven above. Soft hymns filled the sacred space, melodies passed down through generations of believers. Ave Maria, Veni Creator Spiritus, these were the lullabies of the devout, sung in voices hushed with reverence. Each note carried centuries of yearning, each word a bridge between earth and eternity. The faithful would close their eyes, allowing the music to wash over them like warm honey, feeling their hearts grow lighter, more open to the mystery approaching with each passing day of sacred waiting. In private chambers, behind closed doors, individual souls engaged in their most personal rituals. Some knelt on bare stone floors, feeling the cold seep into their bones as penance. Others spread worn prayer books before them, fingers tracing familiar passages until the words became living things. These solitary moments were precious, stolen time, when the faithful could shed their worldly masks and stand naked before their Creator, vulnerable, honest, completely themselves in the darkness of winter. The rhythm of prayer became as natural as breathing, as essential as heartbeat. Morning prayers at dawn, evening prayers at dusk, and countless moments in between when the soul reached upward. Medieval Christians carried prayer beads, smooth wooden spheres worn soft by countless fingers. Each bead, a meditation, a moment of connection. They understood that true spiritual preparation could not be rushed, that the soul, like winter soil, needed time to soften and prepare for new life. As the days grew shorter, the inner light grew brighter. Fasting sharpened their spiritual senses, making every prayer more intense, every moment of silence more profound. Hunger became a teacher, showing them what true need felt like, preparing them to recognize the bread of life when it appeared. In their weakness, they found strength. In their emptiness, they discovered fullness. This was the sacred paradox of Advent, that emptying oneself created space for the infinite to enter. Sunday Mass brought the solitary faithful together, individual streams flowing into a mighty river of worship. The cathedral filled with whispered prayers, hundreds of voices joining in ancient chants, creating a symphony of longing. Here, private devotion became public declaration, personal hope merged with collective faith. Incense rose like prayers made visible, candlelight multiplied into galaxies of devotion, and for a few precious hours, heaven seemed to touch earth in the most tangible way possible. The priest's voice echoed through vaulted spaces, carrying words that had been spoken for centuries. Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. The congregation responded as one, their voices blending into a tapestry of faith. Each person brought their private struggles, their secret hopes, their deepest fears, laying them at the altar like precious offerings. In this sacred communion, individual prayers became part of something larger, eternal, transcendent, beyond human understanding or earthly limitation. After the Mass, after the crowds dispersed, silence returned like a gentle friend. The faithful lingered, reluctant to break the spell of sacred presence. Some knelt inside chapels, continuing their private conversations with the divine. Others simply sat, breathing in the lingering incense, feeling the weight of centuries of prayer that had been offered within these walls. The stones themselves seemed to hum with accumulated devotion, holding the hopes and dreams of countless souls across the ages. In monastery cells, the most dedicated souls embraced even deeper solitude. These monks had chosen a life of complete surrender, their days structured around prayer, work, and contemplation. Their cells were sparse, containing only essentials: a narrow bed, a wooden crucifix, a prayer book worn soft with use. Here, in these humble spaces, the greatest spiritual battles were fought, the deepest truths discovered, the most profound transformations accomplished through grace alone. Brother Benedict retreated to his cell as evening fell, his footsteps echoing softly down the stone corridor. Behind his wooden door, he knelt on the rough floor, hands folded, eyes closed, heart open. The monastery grew quiet around him, other brothers following the same ritual of evening prayer. In this darkness, this silence, this complete solitude, he felt most connected to the divine mystery, most aware of his own smallness, most grateful for the opportunity to serve. Hours passed like whispered prayers, unmarked by clocks or schedules, measured only by the gradual deepening of night. Brother Benedict remained motionless, his breathing steady, his mind gradually emptying of worldly concerns. This was the work of contemplation, not thinking about God, but simply being present to the sacred, allowing the divine to work within the silence, trusting that emptiness would be filled, that darkness would give birth to unexpected light and transformation. The monk's cell became a universe infinite in its possibilities, despite its humble dimensions. Here was the true meaning of Advent, the inward journey that prepared the soul for divine encounter. Not the external preparations, not the feasting or decorating, but this radical turning within, this willingness to face the darkness, to wait in uncertainty, to trust that something beautiful was being born in the depths of patient, faithful, waiting, and surrender. Medieval Christians understood what we have forgotten, that the greatest celebrations require the deepest preparations, that joy is sweetest after genuine sorrow, that light shines brightest in the darkest places. Their advent was not gentle, not comfortable, not easy. It demanded everything: their comfort, their certainty, their need to control. In return, it offered transformation, authentic encounter with the sacred, and the kind of deep peace that surpasses all understanding completely. As midnight approached, Brother Benedict rose slowly from his knees, his body stiff from hours of prayer, his soul strangely light. The cell that had felt so small now seemed vast, filled with presence, with possibility, with the quiet certainty that his waiting had not been in vain. He moved to his narrow window, gazing out at stars that had witnessed countless such vigils, countless souls preparing, countless hearts opening to receive the gift approaching. This was the essence of medieval Advent, this solitary vigil, this patient waiting in darkness, this radical trust that emptiness would be filled, that silence would be broken by divine song, that winter would give way to the most extraordinary spring. In learning to wait, they learned to hope. In learning to fast, they learned to feast. In learning to be alone, they discovered they were never truly alone at all in their sacred journey. Chapter 6. In Winter's Silence. The medieval world grows hushed as December's grip tightens across the land. Snow blankets the countryside in pristine white, muffling even the boldest sounds. In this season of waiting, the faithful discover something profound in the stillness. The very air seems to hold its breath, as if the earth itself prepares for something sacred. Here, in winter's embrace, true contemplation begins. The silence speaks louder than any bell. Across snow-covered fields, a single cottage glows warmly against the white expanse. Smoke curls lazily from its chimney, disappearing into the gray winter sky. Inside, the pace of life has slowed to match the season's rhythm. No rushing, no hurried footsteps on stone floors, only the gentle sounds of domestic life, the soft whisper of wool being spun, the quiet crackling of embers settling in the hearth. Winter demands patience, and patience teaches wisdom. Near the window, where pale light filters through frost-etched glass, a woman sits at her spinning wheel. Her hands move with practiced grace, drawing wool into fine threads. Each turn of the wheel creates a gentle hum, a lullaby that matches her steady breathing. This is not mere work, but meditation in motion. With every strand she spins, she weaves her prayers into the fiber, preparing warm garments for the cold months ahead. Her patience mirrors the season's own. The wheel turns slowly, methodically, creating a rhythm that soothes both body and spirit. Click, turn, draw, twist. The wool transforms beneath her gentle touch, from rough fleece to smooth thread. In medieval times, winter was a season for such quiet crafts, when women gathered wool and flax from autumn's harvest, spinning stories along with their threads. Their hands stayed busy while their hearts grew still, finding peace in simple, repetitive motions. Outside, the world has transformed into something magical. Pine trees stand like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with fresh snow. Each needle sparkles with tiny crystals of ice, catching what little sunlight filters through the cloudy sky. The forest floor lies buried beneath a thick white blanket, unmarked by footprints, untouched by human hands. In this pristine wilderness, every branch, every stone, every fallen log disappears beneath winter's gentle covering, creating a landscape of dreams. The scent of pine drifts on the cold air, sharp and clean, mingling with smoke from distant chimneys. It's a fragrance that speaks of endurance, of trees that remain green when all else fades to brown. Medieval people knew this scent well, gathering pine boughs to decorate their homes during Advent, bringing the forest's eternal promise indoors. The evergreen reminded them that life persists, even in winter's darkest hours. Hope remains forever green and growing. Inside the cottage, the fire crackles softly in the hearth, sending dancing shadows across stone walls. Each pop and hiss of burning wood creates its own music, a percussion that accompanies the spinning wheel's gentle rhythm. Orange flames leap and flutter, casting warm light on the woman's peaceful face. The fire's glow pushes back the winter darkness, creating a circle of comfort in the vast, cold world beyond the walls. Here, warmth and light triumph over winter's chill. Snow begins to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the window like tiny white feathers. Each snowflake catches the firelight briefly, sparkling for just a moment before melting against the glass. The woman pauses in her spinning to watch, her breath creating small clouds in the cool air near the window. In medieval times, people read meaning in such moments, seeing in each falling flake a prayer descending from heaven, gentle blessings covering the earth in purity. The sensation of winter seeps through every crack and crevice, not harshly, but with quiet insistence. Cold air carries the promise of longer nights, earlier darkness, deeper silences. Yet there's comfort in this seasonal rhythm, a natural slowing that invites reflection. Medieval people understood winter as a necessary pause, a time when the earth rests and renews itself, when human hearts turn inward to discover treasures hidden in stillness, when the soul learns to listen rather than speak. The cottage seems to breathe with the rhythm of the season, timbers creaking softly as they adjust to the cold, walls settling into winter's embrace. Every surface tells a story of patience, wooden beams that have weathered countless winters, stone floors worn smooth by generations of faithful feet. This dwelling knows how to wait, how to endure, how to hold warmth and light when the world outside grows dark and silent. Through the frost-covered window, the landscape continues its slow transformation. What once seemed harsh and barren now reveals hidden beauty, the elegant architecture of bare branches, the gentle curves of snow-covered hills, the subtle shadows that dance across white fields. Medieval eyes learned to find God in such quiet scenes, discovering that winter's apparent emptiness actually overflows with subtle, sacred presence, visible only to those who learn to truly see. The woman's hands never pause in their gentle work, fingers moving with the wisdom that comes from countless hours of practice. Thread after thread grows beneath her touch, each one perfect, strong, ready to become part of something larger. Her spinning embodies the patience that Advent requires, the willingness to work slowly, steadily, trusting that small daily efforts will eventually create something beautiful and lasting, just as small daily prayers build a foundation of faith. But winter's beauty carries within it a harder truth. Survival requires vigilance, even in the quietest moments, beyond the cottage's circle of warmth. In the deep forest where snow lies thick among the pines, something moves. A shadow slips between the trees, gray against white, lean and desperate. Winter hunger drives creatures from their usual hiding places, bringing the wild world closer to human settlements, reminding all that this season demands both patience and wisdom. The wolf emerges from the tree line, gaunt from weeks of scarce hunting, drawn by the scent of smoke and life. Its yellow eyes scan the settlement, calculating, measuring, searching for opportunity. This is winter's harsh mathematics, the delicate balance between survival and destruction, between the tame and the wild. Medieval people understood this tension well, living always at the edge of wilderness, knowing that winter could transform even familiar landscapes into places of danger and uncertainty. The creature pauses at the forest's edge, breath visible in small white puffs, ears alert to every sound. Snow clings to its thick gray coat, and its ribs show faintly beneath the fur, evidence of lean times and scarce meals. Yet there's dignity in its bearing, a wild nobility that commands respect even in desperation. This wolf carries winter's truth in its very bones, the knowledge that survival requires both strength and cunning, both courage and careful timing. Inside the cottage, the woman continues spinning, unaware of the drama unfolding beyond her walls. Her thread grows steadily, each strand adding to the store of warmth she'll need in the months ahead. The fire burns lower now, settling into glowing coals, while outside, two worlds hover at the boundary between safety and wildness, between the cultivated and the untamed, between winter's gentle silence and its unforgiving hunger, both equally real, both demanding recognition and respect. Chapter 7: The Respite Within. As December winds howled through the village streets, medieval families gathered closer to their hearths, seeking sanctuary from winter's relentless grip. The contrast between outdoor harshness and indoor warmth created a sacred boundary, a threshold between survival and comfort. Behind thick wooden doors and shuttered windows, communities found solace in shared spaces where the bitter cold could not reach their weary souls, and hope flickered like candlelight. The communal longhouses buzzed with quiet activity, families huddled together around central fire pits, their breath visible in the chilly air despite the flames. Shared blankets and woolen cloaks created pockets of precious warmth, while carefully rationed food provided just enough sustenance to endure the fasting period. Children pressed close to their mothers, grandparents shared wisdom in hushed tones, and neighbors became extended family through necessity, creating bonds that would last generations. In these intimate spaces, the harsh realities of Advent fasting seemed temporarily suspended. Though their stomachs remained empty, their hearts filled with something deeper than hunger: connection, community, the unspoken understanding that suffering shared was suffering diminished. The flickering firelight cast dancing shadows on weathered faces, each person contributing to the collective warmth that made survival possible, transforming individual hardship into communal resilience, proving that together they could endure anything. As evening settled over the village, the sacred tradition of storytelling began around the central hearth. Elder voices wove tales of previous winters, of ancestors who had survived even harsher conditions, of saints who had fasted for 40 days and emerged transformed. These stories served multiple purposes: educating the young about their heritage, providing distraction from empty bellies, and reinforcing the spiritual significance of their current sacrifices, making their suffering meaningful, purposeful, even noble. The storyteller's voice rose and fell like a gentle lullaby, describing miraculous feasts that awaited the faithful after Christmas, paintings vivid pictures of roasted meats and sweet breads that seemed almost within reach. Children's eyes grew wide with anticipation, while adults allowed themselves brief moments of dreaming about the celebratory meals to come. These tales of future abundance provided psychological nourishment, sustaining hope when physical sustenance remained scarce, proving that imagination could be its own form of feast. Outside, snow continued to fall in thick, silent curtains, coating the world in pristine whiteness that muffled all sound. But inside the longhouse, life continued with quiet determination. Women mended clothes by firelight, their needles catching glints of flame as they worked. Men carved wooden toys for Christmas morning, their hands moving with practiced precision despite the cold. These simple activities created a rhythm, a peaceful routine that helped pass the long, dark hours of winter evening. And moi carve cold, and desig tade, paceful toe, and concrete precision, paceful toe, paceful toe. The air grew thick with the scent of wood smoke and unwashed bodies, yet somehow these familiar odors brought comfort rather than discomfort. This was the smell of survival, of human resilience, of families choosing to endure together rather than face the darkness alone. Babies slept peacefully in their mother's arms, lulled by the constant murmur of quiet conversation and the hypnotic crackling of burning logs, their trust in their elders' ability to protect them, absolute and touching. As the night deepened, preparations began for one of Advent's most significant rituals, the bringing of the Yule log. This wasn't just any piece of wood, but a carefully selected trunk, often from an oak or ash tree, chosen for its size and symbolic importance. The log represented the promise of extended celebration, the fuel that would burn throughout the Christmas season, transforming their temporary shelter into a place of genuine festivity, turning survival into triumph, endurance into joy. Several strong men rose from their places around the fire, their movement causing others to look up expectantly. Tonight was the night the great log would be hauled inside, a task requiring coordination, strength, and careful planning. The log had been seasoning outside for months, waiting for this moment when it would become the centerpiece of their Christmas hearth. Its entry into the longhouse marked a crucial transition from mere survival mode to preparation for celebration, from endurance to anticipation. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, allowing bitter wind to rush inside, causing everyone to huddle deeper into their wrappings. But this temporary discomfort served a greater purpose. The men worked together to maneuver the massive log through the doorway, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air, their muscles straining against the weight. This communal effort symbolized their shared commitment to the coming celebration, their willingness to sacrifice present comfort for future joy, proving their faith in better days ahead. Once inside, the Yule log dominated the space, its presence transforming the humble longhouse into something approaching grandeur. Children gathered around to touch its rough bark, their small hands tracing the patterns left by weather and time. This log would burn for 12 days, from Christmas Eve through Epiphany, its flames providing both physical warmth and spiritual significance, its smoke carrying their prayers upward, its light pushing back the darkness that seemed to define their world during these shortest days of winter. The positioning of the log in the great hearth required ceremony and precision. It couldn't simply be shoved into place, but must be arranged to burn slowly, steadily, providing maximum warmth and light while lasting the full Christmas season. Elders supervised the placement, ensuring the log was positioned correctly, while younger family members gathered kindling and smaller branches, everyone participating in this sacred preparation, this bridge between the fasting season and the approaching feast, between sacrifice and reward. As the Yule log settled into its place of honor, the atmosphere in the longhouse shifted subtly, expectation mixing with exhaustion, hope tempering hunger, the promise of celebration making current hardships more bearable. The log's presence served as a tangible reminder that their suffering had purpose, that Christmas was truly coming, that their faith and endurance would soon be rewarded. Even children who had been restless with hunger seemed to calm, soothed by this visible symbol of approaching joy and abundance. Outside, the winter storm continued its relentless assault on their small community, wind howling through bare branches, snow piling against shuttered windows, creating a world that seemed hostile to human life. Yet inside their refuge, warmth and companionship created a different reality entirely, one where human connection conquered natural forces, where shared suffering became shared strength, where the promise of Christmas made even the harshest conditions bearable, transforming mere survival into something approaching triumph over adversity. The dichotomy was striking, complete, and somehow beautiful. Outside lay a world of death and dormancy, snow covered fields lying fallow, trees stripped bare of leaves, animals huddled in whatever shelter they could find. But inside, life persisted, relationships deepened, traditions continued, faith endured. This contrast wasn't accidental, but fundamental to the medieval understanding of Advent, that through darkness came light, through suffering came redemption, through winter's death came spring's resurrection, through fasting came feast. As the fire settled into a steady burn, casting warm light on tired faces, the longhouse became a sanctuary, in the truest sense, a holy place where human resilience met divine promise, where community triumphed over individual hardship, where the indoor world of warmth and connection provided refuge from the outdoor world of cold and isolation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had found respite within, proof that even in winter's depths, hope could flourish, and Christmas was indeed coming. Chapter 8. Midwinter's Eve. The longest night of the year has arrived, and with it comes a sacred pause in the relentless Advent fast. Tonight, the rules soften like candle wax as medieval Christians gather in flickering warmth. Ancient pagan traditions whisper through stone walls, mingling with Christian prayers in ways the church never quite intended. This is the night when darkness reaches its deepest point before light returns to the world. In countless villages across medieval Europe, families huddle close around massive Yule logs, their faces painted golden by dancing flames. The wood crackles and pops, releasing the scent of oak and ash into the winter air. These logs, carefully selected and blessed, will burn through the entire longest night, a beacon of hope against the consuming darkness that seems to swallow the world whole. Tonight, the usual fasting rules are gently set aside, replaced by modest celebration and shared warmth. Families bring out carefully hoarded treats, dried fruits and nuts, perhaps even a small portion of preserved meat. The austerity of Advent softens just for these precious hours as communities remember that even in darkness there must be moments of light and togetherness to sustain the human spirit. Ancient pagan rituals flow seamlessly into Christian observance, like streams merging into a river. Evergreen boughs hang from rafters, their sharp scent a reminder of life persisting through winter's grip. Holly and ivy, plants that remain green when all else dies, decorate humble homes alongside crude wooden crosses, creating a beautiful tapestry of old beliefs and new faith woven together. In monastery halls, monks gather for special midnight prayers, their voices rising in haunting chant through stone corridors. But even here, ancient traditions creep in as they light extra candles, more than usual, casting warm light on cold walls. The rigid schedule of daily prayers expands tonight, welcoming the mystery of this turning point, this sacred threshold between seasons and worlds. Village children, usually tucked away by sunset, are allowed to stay awake, their wide eyes reflecting firelight as elders tell stories. Tales of saints blend with older stories of winter spirits and the returning sun, passed down through generations like precious heirlooms. Tonight, the boundary between sacred and secular between Christian and pagan becomes beautifully blurred in the telling of ancient wisdom. The feast tonight is modest, but feels abundant after weeks of sparse meals. Bread, precious and warm, is shared with special reverence. Small cups of ale or wine, normally forbidden during the fast, appear on rough wooden tables. Each sip, each bite, is savored slowly, a communion not just with food, but with the promise that light will return to the world. Outside, the world lies wrapped in winter's deepest embrace, snow muffling all sound except the occasional crack of bare branches. Inside, the warmth of human connection pushes back against the cold as neighbors share space around fires, their differences forgotten in the face of the season's profound darkness, finding comfort in each other's presence during these sacred hours. Midnight approaches, and with it, a sense of anticipation fills the air like incense. This is the turning point when the sun begins its slow journey back to strength, though dawn is still hours away. Families gather closer, sharing body heat and whispered prayers, knowing they are witnessing something profound, the ancient dance between light and shadow, death and rebirth. As the night deepens, old songs emerge, half remembered melodies that seem to rise from the earth itself. Some words are Latin, learned in church, others much older, echoing from times when different gods walked these lands. The music weaves together Christian hymns and pagan chants, creating something entirely new, yet timelessly ancient, a sound uniquely belonging to this sacred night. The Yule log burns steadily, its flames never allowed to die, tended carefully through the long dark hours. Children take turns feeding it, adding small sticks and dried herbs, each addition accompanied by whispered wishes, hopes for spring's return, prayers for health and happiness, dreams carried upward on spirals of fragrant smoke into the winter sky. Hours pass in comfortable silence, broken only by the soft murmur of conversation, the gentle snoring of sleeping elders, the occasional burst of sparks from the fire. Time moves differently on this night, stretched and sacred, as if the normal rules of existence have been gently suspended, allowing space for magic and mystery to enter the world. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the darkness begins to shift, losing some of its dense weight. Those still awake notice at first a subtle change in the quality of night, as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for something momentous to occur. Eyes turn toward windows, searching for the first hint of approaching dawn, the promise that light will indeed return. And then, there it is, the faintest blush of pale light touching the eastern horizon, barely visible, yet unmistakably real. A collective sigh ripples through the gathered community, relief and joy mixed together as the sun begins its victorious return. The longest night is ending, defeated once again by the eternal promise of morning, of hope, of light overcoming darkness. The first sunrise after the solstice feels different, more precious, earned through hours of faithful waiting. Golden light streams through frost-covered windows, illuminating tired but peaceful faces, transforming the humble room into something cathedral-like. People stretch and smile, knowing they have witnessed something sacred, the turning of the great wheel, the eternal cycle of seasons. As morning light grows stronger, the special magic of Midwinter's Eve begins to fade, but its memory will warm hearts through the remaining weeks of Advent. The fast will resume, but gentler now, softened by this night of community and hope. The page turns toward Christmas, toward the promise of birth and renewal, carried forward on the light of this sacred dawn. Chapter 9. The Stillness After. The winter solstice has passed, yet its significance lingers in the cold air like incense from morning prayers. Though astronomers mark this as the turning point, when daylight begins its slow return to the world, medieval hearts understood a deeper truth. The real transformation lay not in measurable minutes of sunlight, but in the quiet spaces between fasting and feast, between penance and celebration, between the old year's burdens and new hope. In monasteries across Europe, the brothers felt this transition in their very bones. Each morning brought the faintest promise, a whisper of light, lasting just moments longer than the day before. Yet winter maintained its iron grip on the landscape, frost painting intricate patterns on chapel windows, breath visible even during the warmest afternoon prayers. The monks understood patience, knowing that God's timing moved differently than human eagerness for spring's arrival. Brother Thomas would rise before dawn, as he had for 30 years of Advent seasons. His feet found the cold stone floors with practiced precision, muscle memory guiding him through darkness to the chapel. The other monks gathered silently, their forms like shadows moving through corridors, lit only by flickering candles. These were the hours when prayer felt most essential, when the world seemed suspended between sleeping and waking, between one sacred season and the next. The prayers during this time carried a different quality, softer somehow, like snow muffling the harsh edges of everyday concerns. Voices rose in ancient Latin chants, echoing off stone walls that had witnessed centuries of such devotions. Each psalm became a meditation on endurance, on finding light within darkness, on trusting that endings always contained the seeds of new beginnings. The brothers understood that spiritual seasons followed their own mysterious calendar. Beyond monastery walls, common folk experienced their own version of this sacred stillness. Village families gathered around hearth fires, the flames casting dancing shadows on weathered faces. Children pressed close to grandparents, eager for stories that made the long winter evenings pass more quickly. These were precious hours when the day's labor ended and imagination could flourish, when simple pleasures became profound gifts, when ordinary moments revealed their extraordinary nature. Evening meals during this period were exercises in gratitude and restraint. Tables held modest portions, root vegetables stored from autumn harvest, dried herbs that brought summer's memory to winter bowls. Families said longer prayers, acknowledging each bite as blessing rather than rite. The bread tasted different somehow, more precious for its scarcity, more meaningful for the intention behind its sharing. Every meal became a small rehearsal for the great feast to come. Mary the baker would knead her dough by candlelight, hands moving in rhythms learned from her mother and grandmother before her. The simple act of creating bread became meditation, flour and water transformed through patient labor into sustenance. She understood that nourishment involved more than filling empty stomachs. It meant feeding souls hungry for connection, for continuity, for the comfort found in traditions passed down through countless generations of faithful hands. Storytelling during these evenings took on special significance, voices weaving tales that connected past and present, that made sense of suffering and celebrated hope. Grandfather Willem would settle into his chair, grandchildren arranged like flower petals around his feet, and speak of saints and miracles, of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary grace. His words became bridges, spanning the gap between the world they knew and mysteries they could barely imagine, between doubt and faith. The countryside itself seemed to participate in this contemplative mood. Snow-covered fields stretched endlessly, broken only by the dark lines of bare trees reaching skyward like prayers. Footpaths between villages appeared as delicate threads, connecting communities that supported each other through winter's challenges. Nature's silence felt intentional, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for the right moment to exhale into spring, into celebration, into the fulfillment of ancient promises. Church bells marked the hours differently during this season, their bronze voices carrying across frozen landscapes with crystalline clarity. Each toll seemed to say, "Not yet, but soon, not yet, but soon." Villagers paused in their daily tasks, listening to these temporal prayers, feeling time itself as sacred gift rather than burden. The bells reminded them that patience was not passive waiting, but active preparation, readying hearts for joy that was surely coming. In cottage windows, single candles burned through longest nights, their flames steady despite wind that rattled shutters and tested faith. These small lights became symbols, declaring that darkness would not have the final word, that warmth could survive even winter's harshest moods. Mothers would point to these candles, teaching children that hope sometimes appeared as nothing more than flickering flame, yet proved stronger than the vast darkness surrounding it, more enduring than fear or doubt. The rituals of daily life took on heightened meaning during this transitional time, drawing water from wells that hadn't frozen, tending fires that must not be allowed to die, caring for animals that depended on human faithfulness. These simple acts became sacred duties. Each gesture connected people to something larger than themselves, to rhythms that had sustained communities for countless generations, to the understanding that survival required both individual effort and collective grace. Women gathered in small groups, hands busy with mending and spinning, while voices shared, whispered hopes for the season ahead. Their conversations moved like gentle currents, touching on practical concerns, children's health, husband's safety, harvests to come, but always returning to deeper currents, to questions about meaning, about purpose, about the mysterious ways that suffering and joy intertwined in human experience, about faith that persisted despite unanswered prayers and unexplained losses. As days slowly lengthened, something shifted in the collective spirit of medieval communities. Not yet celebration, but anticipation began stirring, like seeds buried beneath snow that somehow sensed approaching warmth. People moved with different energy, still careful, still respectful of winter's power, but touched by growing awareness that change was coming, that the season of preparation was drawing toward its intended conclusion, that all this waiting served a greater purpose than they had fully understood. The final weeks of Advent carried a unique quality, neither the stark severity of its beginning nor the joyful abandon of Christmas itself, but something precious in between. This was the time of almost, of nearly, of soon, but not yet. Hearts that had learned to find contentment in scarcity now faced the challenge of preparing for abundance, of transitioning from the spiritual discipline of fasting to the spiritual generosity of feasting, from solitude to celebration, from waiting to welcoming. And so, as our medieval ancestors moved through these final days of preparation, they carried within themselves all the lessons that stillness had taught them. They had learned that light meant more when it followed darkness, that food tasted sweeter after genuine hunger, that joy could only reach its full height when it grew from roots of patience, from soil of sacrifice, from the deep understanding that the most precious gifts, the most transformative moments, always came to those who knew how to wait. Chapter 10 the long-awaited dawn. After 40 long days of fasting, the medieval faithful could finally taste freedom. Christmas Eve had arrived, and with it came the most sacred permission of all, the breaking of the Advent fast. In candlelit kitchens across Europe, families gathered around simple wooden tables, their stomachs empty, but their hearts full of anticipation, knowing that tonight everything would change. The long season of denial was finally beautifully over. The church bells had rung their evening call, signaling the end of the fast just as twilight painted the winter sky. Medieval families emerged from their homes, moving like shadows through snow-covered streets toward their parish churches. Their breath formed small clouds in the frigid air, each exhale a prayer of gratitude. Tonight was different, special, sacred. Tonight they would taste food again, not just as sustenance, but as a celebration of Christ's approaching birth. Inside the stone walls of medieval homes, mothers unwrapped precious parcels they had hidden away for weeks. Small wheels of cheese, carefully aged and stored in cool cellars, emerged like treasures from their cloth coverings. The rich, creamy aroma filled the air, a scent that seemed almost foreign after so many days of simple broths and bread. Children gathered close, their eyes wide with wonder, as if seeing cheese for the very first time. Fathers brought forth small clay jugs from hidden corners, containing precious mead made from summer's honey. The golden liquid caught the flickering candlelight, looking almost magical in the dim room. They poured tiny portions into wooden cups, just enough for each family member to wet their lips. The sweet, warming taste would be their first real indulgence in 40 days, a liquid reminder of abundance, of celebration, of life returning to their weary bodies after such sacrifice. The breaking of the fast was not rushed, but approached with the reverence of a religious ceremony. Families knelt together before their simple meals, offering prayers of thanksgiving that echoed through stone walls. Each morsel of cheese was savored slowly, deliberately, as if it were the most precious delicacy. The mead was sipped with closed eyes, allowing the sweetness to awaken taste buds that had forgotten such pleasure. This was feasting medieval style, simple yet profound. Outside, snow continued to fall in soft, gentle flakes, blanketing the medieval village in pristine white. Through frost-covered windows, warm candlelight flickered like stars against the darkness. In every home, the same sacred ritual was taking place, families reuniting, not just with food, but with the joy that had been carefully set aside during Advent. The contrast was striking, the harsh winter cold outside, the warm fellowship within, creating perfect harmony between sacrifice and celebration. Children who had barely remembered the taste of cheese now giggled softly as the creamy texture melted on their tongues. Their small hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from excitement as they held their cups of mead. Mothers watched with gentle smiles, remembering their own childhood Christmas Eves, when breaking the fast felt like the most magical moment of the year. These memories would live in their hearts, passed down through generations, connecting past to present in unbroken tradition. The medieval Christmas Eve feast was modest by our standards, yet it felt abundant to those who had fasted so long. Small pieces of dried fruit appeared precious as gems after weeks without sweetness. Nuts carefully saved from autumn harvests were cracked open, their rich oils coating fingers that had known only simple fare. Each bite was a revelation, a reminder of God's provision, a celebration of the abundance that would return with Christ's birth. As families shared their simple feast, conversations flowed in whispered tones, respectful of the sacred night. Stories were told of Advents past, of grandparents who had kept these same traditions, of the deeper meaning behind their sacrifice. The fasting had not been mere custom, but preparation, a way of emptying themselves to make room for the divine. Now, as they slowly filled their stomachs, they also filled their spirits with gratitude, with wonder, with anticipation. The warmth of the mead spread through their bodies, chasing away the chill of winter and weeks of deprivation. Cheeks grew rosy in the candlelight, eyes brightened with renewed energy, and hearts swelled with communal joy. This was the reward for their faithfulness, not just the food itself, but the heightened appreciation it brought. Every texture, every flavor, every moment of satisfaction felt magnified, blessed, transformed by the context of their long wait. Medieval families understood something we have forgotten, that abundance means nothing without scarcity, that celebration requires preparation, that joy is deepest after sorrow. Their Christmas Eve breaking of the fast was not gluttony, but gratitude made manifest. Each small bite of cheese, each sip of mead, each shared glance across the table spoke of appreciation earned through sacrifice. They had learned to value what we take for granted, food as blessing rather than mere fuel. As the evening deepened, families began to clear their simple feast, but the sense of celebration lingered in the air like incense. Children were tucked into beds warmed by heated stones, their bellies finally content after so many nights of hunger. Parents lingered by dying fires, reflecting on the spiritual journey they had just completed, knowing that tomorrow would bring Christmas Day, the culmination of all their patient waiting, all their faithful sacrifice, all their hopeful prayers. Then, just as midnight approached, something magical happened in the winter sky above their village. Through gaps in the heavy clouds, a single star appeared, brighter than all the others, shining down on their snow-covered rooftops with unusual brilliance. Families who had stayed awake caught glimpses through their windows, and word spread quietly from house to house, whispered like a secret, shared like a gift. The Christmas star had appeared. Doors opened slowly, carefully, as families emerged into the crisp night air to witness this celestial announcement. Children pressed close to their parents, pointing with mittened hands toward the brilliant star that seemed to pulse with divine light. The snow reflected its glow, creating a silver pathway across the village square, as if heaven itself was reaching down to touch their humble earth, declaring that Christmas, true Christmas, had finally, beautifully, gloriously arrived. In that moment, standing beneath the Christmas star, the medieval villagers understood the full meaning of their 40-day journey. The fasting, the waiting, the sacrifice, all had led to this perfect moment of divine revelation. Their empty stomachs, now gently filled, reminded them that spiritual hunger, too, had been satisfied. The star above seemed to whisper the same message the angels had sung centuries before, that Christ was born, that hope had come, that their long Advent wait was over. As families returned to their warm homes, the Christmas star continued to shine, a beacon of hope and fulfillment watching over their peaceful village. The long-awaited dawn was coming, bringing with it Christmas Day, and with Christmas Day, the full feast they had earned through patient faith. Tonight had been about ending the fast. Tomorrow would be about celebrating the feast, both connected by the timeless rhythm of sacrifice and joy, of waiting and receiving, of Advent and Christmas. Chapter 11, Echoes of Joy. The bells begin at midnight, their bronze voices cascading across the winter landscape, calling the faithful from their warm beds into the holy darkness. After 40 days of fasting, of quiet contemplation, of whispered prayers in shadowed alcoves. Christmas has finally arrived. The great doors of the cathedral swing open, candlelight spills onto the snow, and the medieval world prepares to celebrate the birth of Christ with unbridled joy. Inside the cathedral, hundreds of candles transform stone pillars into golden columns of light. The air shimmers with incense, frankincense, and myrrh, the same gifts once offered to the Christ child. Families who have eaten nothing but porridge and bread for weeks now anticipate the feast to come. Children peer wide eyed at the nativity scene, their faces glowing in the flickering candlelight, while their parents bow their heads in reverent gratitude. The choir master raises his hand, and silence falls like a gentle blanket over the congregation. Then, the first notes of O Come All Ye Faithful drift through the sacred space, voices joining in perfect harmony. Rich baritones, sweet soprano melodies, the Latin words echoing off vaulted ceilings, creating a sound so beautiful it seems to lift the very stones toward heaven. This is the sound of pure joy, uncontained and overflowing. Even the poorest peasant families have saved something special for this night. A precious egg, a small piece of cheese, perhaps honey, gathered in autumn and hidden away. These simple treasures, forbidden during the long fast, now represent the sweetest of victories. Children who have dreamed of sugar plums, who have watched their parents carefully ration each grain of wheat, finally understand that waiting makes every blessing more precious. The midnight mass unfolds like a tapestry woven from centuries of tradition. The priest, resplendent in gold vestments, raises the communion chalice toward the altar cross. Stained glass windows, though dark at this hour, seem to glow with inner light as hundreds of candles dance in the winter draught. Every prayer, every hymn, every moment of reverent silence connects these medieval worshippers to something eternal and sacred. Outside the cathedral, the town square fills with the sounds of celebration. Merchants who have carefully saved their finest goods now open their stalls to share unexpected generosity. A baker offers fresh bread, still warm from the oven, to hungry children. A cloth merchant drapes colorful ribbons around the necks of delighted youngsters. This is Christmas giving, not the calculated exchanges we know today, but spontaneous acts of pure kindness. The contrast is striking. After weeks of solemnity and sacrifice, the entire community erupts in joyful celebration. Laughter echoes through cobblestone streets, mingling with the distant sound of church bells. Families who have prayed together through the dark weeks of Advent now dance together under the winter stars. The fast is broken, the waiting is over, and Christmas Day spreads like golden honey across the medieval world. In manor houses, lords and ladies prepare for the traditional Christmas feast. Tables that have stood bare during Advent now groan under the weight of roasted meats, aged cheeses, and precious spices. The wealthy, who could have afforded to eat richly throughout the fast, chose instead to share in their community's sacrifice. Now their celebration becomes a testament to the power of waiting, of earning joy through patient endurance. Young apprentices who have worked by candlelight through the long winter evenings now receive small gifts from their masters. A new tool, a warm cloak, perhaps a handful of coins. These presents, practical rather than frivolous, represent investment in the future. The medieval world understands that true generosity builds community, creates bonds, and ensures that no one faces the harsh winter alone and forgotten. The cathedral choir continues, their voices weaving ancient melodies that have echoed through these stone walls for centuries. Gloria in excelsis Deo, the words floating upward like prayers made audible. Children who have never heard such beautiful music stand transfixed, their small hands clasped together in wonder. This is their introduction to the power of sacred sound, to melodies that can lift the human spirit beyond earthly concerns. In humble cottages, families gather around their hearths to share their Christmas meal. The food, simple by our standards, tastes like ambrosia to those who have fasted faithfully. A bowl of meat broth, a piece of white bread, perhaps an apple saved from harvest time. Each bite is savored, each flavor appreciated with an intensity that modern abundance can never match. Gratitude fills every corner of these modest homes. The night air carries the sound of distant singing as groups of carolers move from house to house. Their voices, though not professionally trained, ring with authentic joy. They sing of angels, of shepherds, of a baby born in Bethlehem who changed the world forever. Doors open to welcome these unexpected visitors, and small gifts are exchanged: cups of warm ale, pieces of gingerbread, tokens of Christmas fellowship. Inside the cathedral, the midnight mass reaches its sacred climax. The moment of communion approaches, and the congregation kneels as one. After 40 days of spiritual preparation, of examining their hearts, of seeking forgiveness, they are ready to receive this holy gift. The priest moves slowly through the crowd, offering bread and wine, connecting each soul to the mystery of Christmas through this ancient ritual. As the service concludes, families emerge into the crisp winter air, their faces glowing with more than just candlelight. They carry within them the warmth of shared celebration, the joy of community, the peace that comes from faithful waiting. Children skip alongside their parents, no longer bound by the quiet solemnity of Advent, their laughter bright as silver bells ringing across the sleeping town. The first Christmas feast begins before dawn as families gather to break their long fast together. Prayers of thanksgiving, heartfelt and sincere, rise from every table. The food, prepared with loving care from carefully hoarded ingredients, nourishes both body and soul. This is Christmas morning, medieval style, where joy springs from sacrifice, where celebration is earned through patient endurance, where every blessing feels like a miracle. As Christmas Day unfolds, the echoes of midnight joy continue to resonate through the medieval world. Church bells ring the hours, their bronze voices announcing to all that the waiting is over, the fast is ended, and Christmas has come at last. These echoes, traveling across centuries, remind us that true celebration, born from sacrifice and seasoned with gratitude, creates joy that lasts long after the final carol fades into silence. Chapter 12. The feast unfolds. After 40 long days of sparse meals and careful restraint, the moment everyone had been patiently waiting for had finally arrived at last. Christmas morning brought with it a magical transformation that would have seemed absolutely impossible just hours before. Kitchens that had whispered with quiet preparation now roared with joyous activity as servants and family members worked together harmoniously to create something truly magnificent and utterly memorable for generations. The centerpiece of this glorious feast, a magnificent roast goose, slowly turned on the spit above glowing embers. Its skin crackled and glistened, releasing rich aromas that would have been unimaginable during the lean days of Advent. The bird had been carefully prepared with herbs and spices, stuffed with breadcrumbs and dried fruits that had been saved specifically for this momentous occasion. Every drop of fat was precious, collected in bowls below to baste vegetables and create the most decadent gravies. Honey, Liquid gold that had been carefully hoarded throughout the fasting season now flowed freely over roasted root vegetables. Parsnips, turnips, and carrots glistened like precious gems as they caramelized in the hearth's warmth. The sweet, sticky glaze transformed these humble vegetables into something almost magical. Children who had grown accustomed to plain broths and simple breads now watched in wonder as their familiar foods became something entirely different, transformed by abundance and the joy of celebration. Tankards of ale, previously forbidden during the solemn fast, now appeared on every table with generous foam crowning their rims. The rich, malty liquid represented more than just refreshment. It symbolized the return of joy and community celebration. Servants moved through the halls with pitchers, ensuring no cup remained empty for long. The gentle buzz of conversation grew louder as the ale worked its warming magic, loosening tongues that had been restrained by weeks of quiet contemplation and spiritual discipline. The great hall blazed with light from dozens of candles and a roaring fire that cast dancing shadows on stone walls. Tables groaned under the weight of platters, bowls, and serving dishes that seemed to multiply before everyone's eyes. Fresh bread, white and soft, replaced the dark, coarse loaves of Advent. Butter, thick and golden, appeared in generous portions alongside wheels of cheese that had aged throughout the fasting period. The contrast with previous weeks felt almost dreamlike in its abundance and richness. Steam rose from every dish, carrying with it the mingled aromas of roasted meats, spiced vegetables, and fresh herbs. The air itself seemed edible, thick with the sense of celebration and plenty. Cooks emerged from kitchens with faces flushed from heat and exertion, carrying the fruits of their intensive labor. Each dish represented hours of preparation, weeks of planning, and months of anticipation. The feast was more than food, it was a sensory experience that engaged every sense simultaneously and completely. Children who had learned patience during the long fast now discovered the true meaning of abundance. Their eyes widened as platters of meat appeared, as sweet treats emerged from hidden stores, as fruits preserved from harvest time finally graced their plates. The discipline they had learned made every bite more precious, every flavor more intense. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that scarcity made abundance sweeter, that waiting made receiving more joyful, that the feast was magnificent precisely because of the fast that preceded it. Adults moved through the celebration with quiet satisfaction, their faces reflecting both relief and gratitude. The successful completion of the Advent fast was an achievement worth celebrating, a testament to their spiritual strength and community bonds. They had supported each other through weeks of denial, shared resources when supplies ran low, and maintained their faith through the darkest days of winter. Now, gathering around overflowing tables, they could finally acknowledge their collective accomplishment while savoring the literal and spiritual fruits of their discipline and devotion. The warmth from the great hearth seemed to penetrate deeper than usual, not just heating bodies, but warming souls that had endured the cold restrictions of the fasting season. Conversations flowed as freely as the ale, filled with laughter that had been carefully modulated during Advent's solemn weeks. Stories emerged, jokes were shared, and the bonds of community strengthened over shared abundance. The fire's glow illuminated faces, bright with joy, creating a circle of light and warmth that symbolized the return of celebration to their lives. Servants who had worked tirelessly to prepare this magnificent feast now found themselves welcomed at the tables as honored guests. The hierarchy that normally defined medieval life softened in the glow of Christmas celebration. Masters served those who had served them, children helped elderly relatives, and the spirit of the season transformed the great hall into something approaching equality. This temporary dissolution of social boundaries was part of the Christmas tradition, a reminder that the season celebrated the birth of one who valued the humble and elevated the lowly. The contrast between this feast and the sparse meals of recent weeks created an almost overwhelming sensory experience. Taste buds dulled by weeks of plain fare exploded with the richness of butter, the sweetness of honey, the complex flavors of herbs and spices. Stomachs, accustomed to modest portions, struggled to accommodate the abundance before them, yet this physical challenge was welcomed, embraced as part of the celebration. The discomfort of overindulgence was a luxury, a privilege earned through weeks of careful denial and spiritual discipline. Music began to fill the spaces between conversations, soft at first, then growing bolder as the celebration gained momentum. Voices joined together in familiar carols, harmonies weaving through the warm air like invisible threads connecting every heart present. The songs spoke of hope, of joy, of the miraculous birth they celebrated. Even those who could not carry a tune found themselves humming along, their spirits lifted by the collective voice of their community. Music, like the feast itself, was a gift freely shared and multiplied blessed in the sharing. As the evening deepened, the feast transformed from formal meal to intimate gathering. Chairs were pushed back from tables, creating space for movement and closer conversation. Children, bellies full and spirits high, played quiet games near the fire's warmth. Adults settled into comfortable discussions, their voices growing softer as contentment replaced the earlier excitement. The abundance remained, but the frantic energy of initial celebration gave way to peaceful satisfaction. The feast was becoming a memory, even as it continued, embedding itself in the hearts of all present. The generation of elders present had lived through many such feasts, each one precious, each one remembered. They sat quietly, watching younger faces discover the joy they themselves had felt decades earlier. Their eyes held the wisdom of many Advents, many Christmases, many cycles of denial and celebration. They understood perhaps better than anyone that this abundance was temporary, that the feast would end, but that its memory would sustain the community through future trials. Their presence blessed the celebration with continuity, with the knowledge that traditions endured through faithfully repeated observance. Gradually, as the night advanced, the feast began its gentle conclusion. Platters, once overflowing, now held only remnants of the magnificent meal. Candles burned lower, their flames dancing more slowly in the gradually cooling air. Conversations grew softer, more intimate, as the public celebration transformed into private moments of reflection and gratitude. The feast had served its purpose, marking the successful completion of Advent, celebrating the birth of Christ, and strengthening the bonds that held this medieval community together through all seasons of joy and hardship. The Christmas feast had been more than a meal, it was a triumph of faith, a celebration of community, and a testament to the power of shared sacrifice, followed by shared abundance. As families prepared to return to their homes, carrying with them both full stomachs and full hearts, they knew they had participated in something sacred. The contrast between fasting and feasting had created a deeper appreciation for both discipline and celebration. They would sleep well this Christmas night, sustained by food and fellowship, ready to carry the spirit of the season into the year ahead. Chapter 13. Beneath the Christmas Moon. As the last echoes of Christmas Day fade into memory, the world transforms into something altogether different. The bustling streets grow quiet, the laughter softens to whispers, and a profound stillness settles over the medieval landscape. Above, the Christmas moon casts its silvery light through heavy clouds, illuminating a world where celebration gives way to contemplation, where community gatherings dissolve into personal reflection, where the sacred night truly begins. The first snowflakes of the evening begin to fall, each one catching the moonlight like tiny crystals descending from heaven. In the village square where hours earlier children played and merchants sold their wares, now only footprints remain, slowly being erased by the gentle snowfall. The cobblestones glisten with fresh powder, creating a carpet of pristine white that muffles every sound, every step, every whispered prayer that drifts from the nearby church windows. Near the edge of the village, a small pond reflects the Christmas moon perfectly, its surface barely disturbed by the falling snow. The water is so still it seems like polished glass, capturing the entire night sky in its depths. Bare winter branches frame this natural mirror, their delicate shadows dancing across the water whenever a gentle breeze stirs the air, creating ripples that fragment the moon's reflection into shimmering pieces before settling back into perfect stillness. In the nearby forest, creatures seek shelter from the deepening cold. A family of deer moves silently through the snow laden pines, their breath visible in small puffs as they search for protected hollows. Rabbits huddle together beneath fallen logs, while winter birds tuck their heads under warm feathers. Even in this season of celebration, nature follows its ancient rhythms, finding comfort in community, finding warmth in togetherness, just as humans do on this sacred night. Through cottage windows, the warm glow of candlelight spills out onto the snow, creating golden puddles of light that seem to pulse with life. Inside, families gather close to their hearths, sharing the quiet moments that Christmas evening brings. Children nestle against their parents, listening to whispered stories of saints and angels, while grandparents rock gently in wooden chairs, their weathered hands folded in prayer, their eyes reflecting the dancing flames, their hearts full of gratitude. In the distance, the faint sound of carolers can be heard, their voices growing softer as they move from house to house. Their lanterns bob like fireflies against the dark winter landscape, tiny beacons of joy moving through the snow covered streets. Soon, even their voices fade completely, leaving only the gentle whisper of falling snow, the occasional hoot of an owl, and the profound silence that blankets the world on this most peaceful of nights. The village church stands silhouetted against the starlit sky, its bell tower reaching toward heaven like a finger pointing to the divine. Warm light filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the snow outside. Inside, a few devoted souls kneel in prayer, their whispered words rising with the incense smoke, their hearts opened wide to receive the blessings of this holy season, their spirits touched by the profound mystery of Christmas night. An elderly woman pulls her woolen cloak tighter as she walks slowly through the snow, making her way to evening prayers. Her footsteps are the only sound in the stillness, each one deliberate and reverent. She pauses beneath a snow-laden oak tree, looking up at the Christmas moon with eyes full of wonder, remembering countless Christmas nights from her long life, each one a precious jewel in the treasury of memory, each one a gift from the divine. In a small cottage, a young mother rocks her newborn child to sleep, humming an ancient lullaby that has been passed down through generations. The baby's eyes flutter closed, trusting and peaceful, while outside the window the snow continues to fall. The mother gazes at her child with infinite tenderness, thinking of another mother, another child, born on a night much like this, when all the world held its breath in wonder, when heaven touched earth in the most gentle way. A shepherd tends his flock in the fields beyond the village, his faithful dog at his side, both keeping watch through the peaceful night. The sheep huddle together for warmth, their woolly forms creating small mountains in the snow. Above them, the Christmas moon illuminates the pastoral scene, casting long shadows across the meadow, while the shepherd remembers the ancient story of other shepherds on another holy night who witnessed glory breaking into the ordinary world. Near the monastery, a monk walks slowly through the cloistered garden, his sandaled feet crunching softly in the snow. He pauses at each stone cross, offering a silent prayer for the souls buried beneath, for the living who struggle and hope, for the coming year with all its unknowns. His breath forms small clouds in the cold air, each exhalation a visible prayer, each step a meditation, each moment a conversation with the divine presence that fills this holy night. In the baker's shop, the last loaves of Christmas bread cool on wooden shelves, their aroma mixing with the scent of pine boughs and beeswax candles. The baker's family gathers around their simple table, sharing the bread they've made with their own hands, grateful for the grain that became flour, for the flour that became sustenance, for the sustenance that becomes communion, for the communion that connects all hearts on this night of nights. A young couple walks hand in hand through the snow-covered market square, their love a warm flame against the winter cold. They speak in hushed tones, sharing dreams of the future, of children yet to come, of Christmases yet to celebrate. Above them, the Christmas moon witnesses their tender promises, their gentle hopes, their quiet faith that tomorrow will bring new blessings, new reasons to rejoice, new opportunities to love and serve and grow in grace. From the castle tower, a lone watchman keeps vigil through the night, his torch casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. He looks out over the peaceful kingdom, over the sleeping village, over the snow-covered fields where his Lord's people rest safe and warm. In his solitude, he finds communion with the divine. In his duty, he finds purpose. In his faithfulness, he finds joy, knowing that his vigilance helps preserve the peace of this most sacred night. As midnight approaches, the snow falls heavier now, blanketing the entire world in pristine white. Every sound is muffled, every edge softened, every harsh line transformed into gentle curves. The Christmas moon slides in and out of clouds, sometimes bright and clear, sometimes veiled in mystery, but always present, always watching over this night of peace, this time of reflection, this season of grace that touches every heart with wonder, every soul with hope. And so the Christmas night deepens, wrapping the medieval world in silence and snow, in moonlight and prayer, in gratitude and peace. The revelry of the day has given way to the contemplation of night. The community celebrations have dissolved into personal reflection. The external joy has turned inward to become spiritual communion. Beneath the Christmas moon, all creation rests, all hearts remember, all souls prepare for the mystery of dawn and the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 14, Stories by the Hearth. As winter nights stretched long across medieval Europe, families would gather close around their glowing hearths. The crackling fire cast dancing shadows on stone walls, while voices carried ancient tales through the darkness. These weren't just moments of entertainment, they were sacred rituals that bound generations together. Tonight, we'll discover how storytelling became the heartbeat of medieval Christmas, warming souls when the world outside grew cold and forbidding. Picture a medieval hall on a December evening. The great hearth blazes with oak logs, sending sparks up the chimney like tiny stars. Children huddle close on rough wooden stools, their faces illuminated by the fire's amber glow. Adults gather behind them, weary from the day's labor, but eager for this cherished ritual. The scent of burning wood mingles with herbs drying overhead, creating an atmosphere where magic feels possible and every shadow holds a story. In these medieval homes, the hearth was more than a source of warmth. It was the family's altar, their theater, their library, all in one. Here, knowledge passed from elder to child through whispered words rather than written pages. Most people couldn't read, so stories carried the weight of history, morality, and faith. The fire's light became their spotlight, transforming ordinary evenings into journeys through time and imagination, where every tale held precious wisdom. As December nights deepened, the stories grew more sacred. Grandfather would lean forward, his weathered hands casting long shadows as he began tales of Christmas miracles. His voice, softened by age and reverence, would paint pictures of angels appearing to shepherds, of stars guiding wise men across desert sands. Each word carried the weight of faith, each pause filled with wonder as listeners felt themselves transported to Bethlehem's holy night, their hearts warming with divine mystery. Between the sacred stories came tales that made children shiver with delicious fear. Ghost stories were especially beloved during these long winter evenings when the veil between worlds seemed thinnest. Grandmother might whisper of spirits who visited on Christmas Eve, seeking redemption or delivering messages from beyond. Her voice would drop to barely a breath, forcing everyone to lean closer until the very air seemed charged with supernatural possibility, and every creak of the house became meaningful. These weren't random entertainments, but carefully chosen stories that shaped young minds. Tales of St. Nicholas, the generous bishop who saved children from poverty, taught lessons about charity and compassion. Stories of brave knights who protected the innocent, instilled values of courage and honor. Each narrative served as both entertainment and education, weaving moral fiber into impressionable hearts, ensuring that Christian virtues would survive another generation, passed down like precious heirlooms through spoken word. The rhythm of these storytelling sessions followed ancient patterns, building slowly, like the fire itself, starting with gentle tales before moving to more dramatic narratives. Voices would rise and fall with the flames, creating a hypnotic cadence that drew listeners deeper into enchantment. Children's eyelids would grow heavy, yet they fought sleep, unwilling to miss a single word. The hearth became a sacred circle where time seemed suspended and the outside world faded completely away. Local legends held special power during these gatherings. Stories of their own village, their own ancestors, their own miraculous events. Perhaps a tale of how their church bells once rang by themselves on Christmas Eve, or how a mysterious stranger had appeared during a harsh winter, bringing food to starving families. These personal narratives created deep connections to place and heritage, making each listener feel part of an ongoing epic, their own lives woven into the grand tapestry of community history. The fire's changing moods enhanced every story's power. When flames leaped high, voices would crescendo with excitement, describing battles between good and evil, or moments of divine intervention. As embers settled into glowing coals, tones would soften, perfect for tender tales of love and redemption. The hearth itself became a storytelling partner, its crackling providing sound effects, its light painting expressions of wonder and fear on every face, as reality and narrative merged seamlessly together. Women often held the most treasured stories, tales passed down through maternal lines, filled with domestic wisdom and feminine strength. Stories of brave mothers who saved their families, of wise women who could see the future, of saints who chose service over comfort. These narratives, told in voices gentle as lullabies, celebrated the quiet heroism of everyday life, teaching daughters their own potential for courage, while honoring the sacred feminine threads that held communities together through darkness and light. As the night progressed, the audience would shift and change. Smaller children, overcome by warmth and gentle voices, would curl up on sheepskins near the fire, still listening, but drifting toward dreams. Older children moved closer, eager to prove their maturity, while adults shared knowing glances over familiar tales. The hearth circle naturally adjusted, creating intimate spaces within the larger gathering, each person finding their perfect distance from both fire and story, warmth and wonder. The most powerful stories were those of transformation, tales where ordinary people discovered extraordinary purpose, where suffering led to wisdom, where darkness gave way to light. These narratives mirrored the listener's own hopes, their own struggles during the harsh medieval winter, their own faith that spring would return, that goodness would triumph, that their own small lives held meaning within God's grand design. Each story became a prayer, whispered into the night, carrying dreams upward with the smoke. Traditional storytellers knew the art of pacing, how to build tension slowly, how to pause at just the right moment, how to let silence speak as loudly as words. They understood that the space between sentences held magic, that anticipation was more powerful than revelation, that the listener's imagination could paint pictures more vivid than any description. These masters of oral tradition conducted symphony orchestras of emotion, using only their voices, their pauses, and the fire's eternal dance. As midnight approached, stories would shift toward endings, toward resolution and peace, tales of homecoming, of families reunited, of prayers answered, of hope fulfilled. The fire would burn lower now, casting gentler shadows as voices grew softer and more tender. This wasn't just entertainment ending, but a ritual of preparation, preparing hearts for sleep, for dreams, for tomorrow's challenges, sending listeners toward rest, with minds filled with beauty, courage, and faith, rather than fear or worry. These hearth gatherings created bonds stronger than blood. Children who grew up sharing stories would carry those narratives throughout their lives, eventually becoming the storytellers themselves, passing the same tales to their own children around their own fires. The stories became living entities, evolving with each telling, yet maintaining their essential truth and power. Through oral tradition, medieval families created immortality, ensuring their values, their history, their very souls would survive long after the fires grew cold. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself in that medieval circle, feeling the fire's warmth on your face, hearing ancient voices weave tales of wonder and faith. Let those stories carry you into dreams where Christmas miracles feel possible, where every ending promises new beginnings, where the hearth of your own heart burns bright with hope and peace. The stories continue, whispered from that time to this, connecting us all through the eternal power of shared narrative and love. Chapter 15, the last snowflakes fall. As the final embers of Christmas fade into memory, a solitary figure stands at the frost-kissed window, watching the last delicate snowflake drift earthward through the nascent dawn light. This moment, this breath between seasons, holds within it the entire tapestry of our medieval journey. From the harsh deprivations of Advent's beginning to this gentle conclusion, every hardship and joy has led us here, to this peaceful threshold between ending and beginning. The landscape stretches endlessly before them, blanketed in pristine white that catches the golden fingers of sunrise. Each undulation of snow-covered earth tells a story. Each bare branch reaching skyward speaks of patience rewarded. This is what our medieval ancestors understood, that true celebration comes only after genuine sacrifice. The 40 days of fasting, the cold morning prayers, the simple meals of bread and ale, all were stepping stones to this sacred stillness. In the distance, smoke rises lazily from cottage chimneys, carrying the last whispers of Christmas warmth into the crisp air. These medieval souls knew something we've forgotten, that anticipation makes joy sweeter, that hunger makes abundance more precious. Their Christmas wasn't a single day of excess, but a season of gradual awakening, each dawn bringing them closer to the light they craved, through winter's darkest months, just as this figure craves the promise of spring. The figure breathes slowly, their breath creating small clouds that dissipate like prayers into the morning air. Behind them, the remnants of Christmas remain, perhaps a sprig of holly on the mantle, the lingering scent of precious spices saved for this sacred season. But their eyes look forward now, toward the rolling hills touched by dawn's gentle caress, toward the promise that winter always keeps, that spring will come, that life continues its eternal dance of endings and beginnings. This is the wisdom our ancestors carried, that every season serves its purpose, that the lean times make the abundant times shine brighter. Their Advent fast wasn't punishment, but preparation, a way of emptying themselves to be filled with wonder. As they denied their bodies the richest foods, they nourished their spirits with expectation, with the deep knowing that what is most precious must be waited for, earned through patience, treasured through scarcity. The snowflake continues its unhurried descent, joining countless others that have already settled into their final resting place. Each flake unique, yet part of the greater whole, just as each day of their medieval fast was unique, yet part of the greater journey toward Christmas light. The figure watches with the same reverence their ancestors felt, knowing that this moment, like all moments, is both ending and beginning, both arrival and departure, both completion and invitation. Through the window glass, clouded with the night's frost, the world appears soft and dreamlike, edges blurred, harsh realities gentled by winter's merciful veil. This is how memory works too, softening the sharp edges of those 40 days of deprivation, leaving only the golden essence of anticipation fulfilled, of hunger satisfied, of darkness giving way to light. Our medieval ancestors emerge from history not as sufferers, but as practitioners of an ancient wisdom we've nearly lost. The dawn light strengthens gradually, painting the snow in shades of rose and gold, transforming the ordinary landscape into something transcendent. This is what Christmas morning must have felt like for those who had truly fasted, who had waited, who had prepared their hearts through 40 days of longing. Not the frantic rush of modern celebration, but this gentle dawning of joy, this slow recognition that the waiting had been worth it, that the hunger had made them ready to feast. The figure's hand rests against the cool window pane, feeling the barrier between warmth and cold, between inside and outside, between the safety of shelter and the wildness of winter. Their medieval counterparts knew these boundaries intimately, lived always at the edge of survival, where a failed harvest meant hunger, where winter meant endurance, where Christmas meant the promise that light would return, that spring would come, that God had not forgotten them in their need. Behind the figure, the house sleeps peacefully, but they remain awake, witnesses to this transition from night to day, from Christmas to the ordinary time that follows. This is the moment our story has been building toward. Not a dramatic climax, but this gentle conclusion, this quiet acknowledgement that all things pass, all seasons turn, all hungers eventually find their satisfaction, all waiting eventually reaches its fulfillment, all darkness eventually meets its dawn. The snowflake touches earth at last, settling among its companions on the windowsill, completing its long journey from cloud to ground. Like the medieval Christmas season itself, it began in darkness, traveled through cold and wind, and found its rest at last in this moment of perfect stillness. The figure smiles slightly, understanding something profound about patience, about the beauty of things that cannot be rushed, about the joy that comes only to those who know how to wait. The bells of distant churches begin their morning call, faint and melodious across the snow-covered miles, calling the faithful to another day of ordinary prayer after the extraordinary celebration of Christmas. Our medieval ancestors would recognize this sound, this call to continue the journey, to return to the rhythm of daily devotion, to carry the light of Christmas into the darker months that follow, knowing that next year the cycle will begin again, the fast will call them once more. Steam rises from a cup of morning tea beside the window. Its warmth, a small luxury that would have seemed precious beyond measure to those who fasted through Advent. The figure sips slowly, savoring not just the tea, but the freedom to savor, the abundance that follows scarcity, the sweetness that follows sacrifice. This is the gift their ancestors gave us, the understanding that every small pleasure is a miracle, every full belly a blessing, every warm drink a prayer of gratitude. The sun climbs higher now, painting longer shadows across the snow, reminding us that time moves forward, that this moment of perfect peace will pass, that life calls us back to its demands and complications. But the figure remains a moment longer, storing this image in memory, this feeling of completion and beginning, the sense that they have witnessed something sacred, the way endings can be beautiful, the way conclusions can be doorways, the way winter always promises spring. Our journey through medieval Advent draws to its close here, in this room, with this figure at this window, watching this snow. We have traveled together through 40 days of fasting, through cold stone churches, through simple meals and complex faith, through a world where Christmas was earned through sacrifice, where celebration followed preparation, where joy was deepened by the hunger that preceded it, where waiting made arrival sweeter than we can imagine. The figure steps back from the window at last, turns toward the day that awaits, carries with them the peace of this moment, the wisdom of this watching, the knowledge that some things never change, that winter always turns to spring, that darkness always yields to light, that those who fast are always fed, that those who wait are always rewarded, that every ending, like this one, is also always a beginning. Sleep well until we meet again in another story, in another season,